Johnathan Oddi, the man who once told authorities he was a sex slave of Sean Combs years before the rapper's downfall, is back in the news in a big way. As Diddy's criminal trial begins on sex crimes charges, new reports indicate Oddi may have signed an NDA with Combs years ago for millions of dollars, and there may be proof to back this up. What does this mean for Sean Combs? And we sit down with Oddi's ex-wife to get her take on all this too. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber.
Do you know Sean Combs?
Puff Daddy?
Yeah.
P. Diddy, whatever you call himself these days. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, he's part of what's called the Boule. The Boule is a branch of the Illuminati.
Okay.
It's the black people. Okay.
All right, by popular demand, I get a ton of messages about him on social media. We are now talking about Johnathan Oddi and his apparent connection to Sean Diddy Combs, because there is quite the update we got to talk about. Going to give you a little bit more context about who he is. So who is he? Well, Johnathan Oddi is the former stripper who was taken into custody in May of 2018 after he fired a gun inside the Trump National Doral Miami Hotel and Resort in the middle of the night. The Florida State Attorney's Office says that Oddi fired shots in the lobby toward the chandelier, then draped a giant American flag across the front desk. He also apparently got into this shootout with police officers. According to the Miami-Dade court, Oddi faces 10 charges, multiple counts of attempted murder, aggravated assault, burglary. There hasn't been a lot of activity regarding his criminal case. One of the last times we talked about him was whether there was going to be a possible plea. We checked the court records. There are like literally more than 800 docket entries, and it appears they just keep resetting a status conference every month. So kind of unclear what the status of his criminal case is, but by all accounts, it appears he's still locked up. But you put that to the side. Here's the thing about Johnathan Oddi and his connection to Diddy. So apparently he sat down for a long interview with law enforcement after his arrest. And during that interview, he brought up, unprompted, that he was Sean Combs' sex slave. Pretty wild allegation at the time, because this was years before Combs would end up being charged with federal sex trafficking, racketeering, prostitution charges, currently on trial. Allegations being that he formed a criminal enterprise using his business to abuse women, including forcing them into coerced sexual performances, including with sex workers, freak-offs, baby oil, drugs. But to go back in time and hear him talk about this stuff is wild.
I had sex with Cassie and Sean. Basically, he would tell me what to do with Cassie. I had like 15 encounters, and I heard a lot of business. Because what they would do is Sean talks a lot on the phone and on the TV with speakers and stuff, and I was like a sex slave. Okay, for them that's what I was. That's all. All right. The hip hop agenda is an agenda to move drugs all over the United States. You need to inform the DEA. They move all the dope, all the dope on private jets, which don't get screened by
customs,
by DEA, inside the United States. Okay, they move what's called high grade powder MDMA. They move cocaine, and they move liquid cocaine in their bottles too. Okay, so they put the liquid cocaine in the bottles and they move it. I've seen the liquid cocaine, I've drank it myself, having sex with Diddy and Cassie. Okay, it's not good. He drinks it all the time.
And that, of course, is in reference to Cassandra Ventura. Combs' ex filed her lawsuit against him in 2023. It was settled, but we believe she's going to be a key witness in his upcoming criminal case. But let's not forget this, because it is very pertinent to what we're about to discuss. This update in this story. Take a listen to what he says here.
I've had a great life. I've settled $4.125 million with Diddy. Okay, but he's scared that I was exposing.
I don't want to talk about Diddy right now. I want to talk about you. Help me understand you.
So why did I play that? Well, according to the Daily Mail and the New York Post, Johnathan Oddi may have in fact signed an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement with Sean Combs, signing this in exchange for $5 million. And apparently, there is a picture of an NDA signed in 2014 that has surfaced. According to the report, you can see Combs' signature on it. It says, over Sean Combs, individually on behalf of Bad Boy Worldwide, Sean John Enterprises. There's a signature there. And Oddi went on to apparently tell authorities, my settlement put me in a box. Basically, I couldn't talk because I was going to be sued. They kept following me, he reportedly also said. And he also said this.
I caught herpes, and I came back and I sued him for the herpes and won. But they did Mark Garagos and Ben Mercedes were his attorneys, okay? And Christopher Leon's here was my attorney. They asked me to turn in that, which was the video recording, and I did so. They gave it back to me accidentally, and it's possible, I threw everything out, it's possible I can produce a copy.
Good.
So now I'm joined by a very special guest. I mentioned at the beginning, have her on with us right now. I'm joined by Johnathan Oddi's former wife of 6 years, Tonia Troutwine. Thank you so much for taking the time and coming here on Sidebar. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for taking interest in my ex-husband's case and, everything that's been going on.
What is it like seeing your ex in the news so much recently since all of the Sean Diddy Combs news broke? I mean, I said it before, I get a million messages about your ex-husband constantly when we first did an episode. I mean, what is it like seeing his name in the news so much?
Well, when I met Johnny, he was a local celebrity in Miami. He danced for the local Spanish telenovelas. He's fluent in Portuguese, Cuban slang. So I knew when I married Johnny, he's a performer. That's not me. He's an exhibitionist. He loves people. He loves being in the limelight. So the fact that he somehow entered the limelight is not a surprise to me. That is not the shocking part. The way it happened is extremely shocking to me, extremely disheartening. And I think my initial reaction was anger, because he knew I was against violence. He was a very kind of anti-violence. So for him to enter kind of the mainstream public arena in a violent way was very disheartening and very sad, very angry and sad.
Hey everybody, this is another Law and Crime legal alert. Did you know that children are being diagnosed with serious conditions like type 2 diabetes and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and the research is potentially linking ultra-processed foods to this? Yeah, so Morgan & Morgan, they're stepping in to fight to hold these food companies accountable. With decades of experience fighting large corporations, they are ready to stand up for the families who deserve justice. If your child under 21 has been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes or fatty liver disease, then visit www.forthepeople.com/food or scan the QR code on screen to learn more. Because you and I had just spoken that you had a great relationship with him up until, of course, things changed.
Oh, absolutely. He helped me out of an abusive relationship. He was the guy, and I think that's why I tolerated a lot of, our differences in our professional lives, because he was I never worried ever. I had complete freedom with him to go on the beach, to work, to meet colleagues. He wasn't controlling, he wasn't abusive in any way. And he was a lot of fun to be around. You always felt safe. He was someone that lit up a room when he walked in. He was a simple guy. He was never flashy or overdressed or anything. But him and I could literally walk into a coffee shop and everyone's head would turn. He was just that striking of a personality.
And you are still in contact with him as he's in jail?
Off and on, I've tried to have contact. They're a little bit difficult, I think, maybe protective of him because of his status and speaking. I prefer to speak to him on lawyer terms than personal. To offer any kind of assistance or advice I could have and give him a little privacy in our consultation, so he can be more open. It has not been that often because it is usually contact on a personal basis, and they do record all those recordings. So we've really limited our interaction, and I believe Johnny to be a victim, and I think victims should speak out. I'm just really concerned that it's been so many years and he hasn't really had an opportunity to speak out.
Do you know the status of his case?
It's been pending for literally 7 years, since 2018.
And
I find that very disheartening. At first it was COVID because they had the big COVID, that was what he explained to me. I did call to follow up and what his attorneys are doing. His attorneys have not called me, consulted with me, talked to me in any way. I have followed other cases of his current attorney, and it does seem he kind of, lets things kind of play out on their own. There
Right.
haven't been any filings. I personally would have, filed many motions to get him out by now. It is a cause of concern. I was going to try to just be support for his counsel at some point, but it's going way further than that.
These are allegations, disturbing allegations regarding the Trump Doral incident. Do you have any idea what happened there?
I saw someone in pain, and I saw someone coming from a violent background. So, whatever transpired in that time, we were separated. It looks like he encountered a lot of violence. Now, I know he comes, from different backgrounds and cultures. And initially, that's what I presume, that maybe he was triggered in some way that, because I don't know if you remember Oscar Pistorius and the South African runner that shot his girlfriend. I was thinking, he had some episode I didn't know about. Uh, but with all the current information with the violence and, P. Diddy's life, and if they were really associated with each other that way, it's possibly he picked up uh, that violent rhetoric from him.
Do you believe he had some sort of relationship with Sean Combs, and what do you think that relationship was?
Oh, I 100% believe he had a very close relationship with Sean Combs. And I believe it was sexual, intimately sexual and violently sexual. Now, this is only based on him telling me. I have no personal knowledge of that. I have absolutely no evidence of that besides his own representations and the representations of Cassie and other people who have made similar claims to what he did in the police investigation video.
Is there anything that you can share about what he told you about it?
Well, I have to be careful here
Sure.
because, we do have some marital privileges that I want to respect should
Sure.
his case ever go to court or he be pulled into a case about any of this. There are also attorney-client privileges. He did consult with me. Now, Johnny did give me a lot of leeway to talk to medium press. He wants his story to be told, but he really wanted me to tell it 7 years ago. And I withheld from telling his story because I didn't want in any way interfere with his defense or his case, because as you know, a lot of things can be taken out of context. It can be misinterpreted. And I said, I like to respect the court system and let things play out. Obviously, he's not had a trial. So he still deserves for people to know why he lost it, what went wrong. I do believe it was as a result of a relationship with P. Diddy that's evidenced, by his contract that he signed. When he did provide me a copy of that contract and did give me permission to show it to the public 7 years again and recently in conversations, he did give it to me almost in fear of his life. Like, Tonia, I've talked to everyone. You're the last person I can talk to. Here, take this. That was kind of the way I caught everything. And it's like, who, what, and I was familiar with P. Diddy, when everyone was back in the 90s. And I haven't, he's become this mogul and kind of behind the scenes. And I hadn't really heard his name again until Johnny brought it up. But yeah, Johnny was an entertainer. He is a local celebrity. Like, you can go around Miami and ask people who he is and they will know him. I wouldn't doubt it if some of the officers that day did know him, and that's why he's still walking, because he could have lost his life that day for sure.
One of the things that I heard you say previously about this NDA, and the reason we can say that this NDA may exist is because you had noticed a change in Johnny's behavior, right? You noticed a change in terms of this urgency to move forward with a divorce filing. Can you talk about that a little bit more and how you believe, because people might say, well, you know, I see this page, it looks like it was signed by Sean Combs, I hear the allegations that he signed an NDA, but there was something that you articulated that I want you to explain to our audience about why you think this is proof that he signed an NDA, his behavior at the time.
Oh, absolutely. We were divorcing, and I really didn't want to divorce Johnny. I really had hope for him. I really, in my heart of hearts, felt he was going the wrong direction with getting more involved. But I thought, well, he just loves to entertain, and who am I to stop that? Who am I to interfere? So I never argued with him or fought him on it, but I thought this will play out. You know, we were in our 30s. We weren't young pups, you know, experimenting. And so I thought, well, he's going to phase out of this. You know, when we got together, he said he wanted to get out of this kind of doing parties and videos and different things. And so I believed him. And I said, well, who am I not to give him a chance, you know? And so I thought he was going to age out of that. We'd go on to something else in our relationship. It would mature, and he never stopped. And I'd never called him for the divorce. I didn't want a divorce. I was happy, you know, not happy with us being separated, but happy with him as a person. It was really, to me, just his career that kept us separated, because I wasn't okay with it. He knew I wasn't. And it was like, look, get over this career and we can just move on. He came to me, and he kind of was very similar in that way. He didn't like my response. He didn't like that I didn't like his career. And so that's where we kind of just let things lay for a while. Then all of a sudden, out of the blue, he calls me. He's like, I need a divorce. And I'm like, okay, you know, I mean, we were separated. I'm like, sure, we'll do it. And he's like, okay, I need you to do the paperwork. Well, I'm an attorney. Of course, I could do the paperwork. A divorce is quite simple. We don't have any assets together. We didn't have any children. It's a very, you know, simple divorce. I prepared the paperwork. I was going to file it. All of a sudden, he hires a lawyer. And the lawyer's calling me, you need to sign this paperwork. You need to get it signed. And I was like, what are you talking about, Jane? You told me you had no money. Why are you hiring a lawyer when I'm a lawyer? I can do the paperwork. It's not a problem. Oh, you're taking too long. You're taking too long. And I'm talking, this is within a few days or weeks. And we've been married 6 years. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm taking too long. And you have to hire a lawyer. Where are you even getting money? I did ask him that. Where are you getting money to hire a lawyer? You know, that you can't just let me handle this. And then it was his lawyer that told him to file the financial affidavit, that he was a personal trainer, which, you know, I know he did way more than personal training. And that was it. And I was like, okay, fine. You know, and I remember when we went to file the paperwork, we had a notary there. I literally rushed out of the house to sign the paperwork. That's how much he was pressuring me. So it wasn't just me thinking it. And I was like, my God, okay, you know, let me do it. And I knew something was up, but he wanted a divorce. I'm going to give it. Maybe he met a new girl. She's giving him a hard time, you know. So I went and forgot my ID. The notary public was like, oh, I'm not doing this. And he kind of looked at us like, you know, when people just say, why are you two shouldn't be getting divorced? It was one of those odd moments. But it was, you know, he could just tell we still cared for each other, I think. And he was just like, well, you didn't bring your ID. I'm not going to do this. And I said, that's fine. You know, I'll take the paperwork, go get it notarized and bring it back. So I went and took it to local notary, and he wouldn't leave me alone about getting the paperwork back to him. And I was like, what is going on? It's like, whatever, just, I went and got the paperwork done. I gave it back to him. And that's all I heard about it. And, you know, I was just fine. I think I even got upset and told his lawyer, you know, he's an like, I was just upset with how he pressured me through the whole thing, and, you know, acted like somehow I was going to create a problem for the divorce. Like, are you kidding me? Like, we've never had a problem in our marriage. Why are we going to have one in our divorce? So you know, it was not a comfortable divorce, but it was what it was. So he went on his way, I went on my way, and that was it. And I didn't even know about the agreement till he randomly contacted me one night, like, and it was a few weeks before the shooting. And it was just, rambling, and I signed this deal for all this money, and he started just throwing lawyer names left and right. Half I've never heard of. I think Gloria Allred was one of the names I'd heard because I admire her. She was one of my inspirations to actually become a lawyer. You know, I studied her throughout my entire life in her cases. They were very high profile. And he mentioned her, and he mentioned a lot of other lawyers' names. And I was just like, wow, okay, maybe, you know, I was looking at it positively that something good, but he was not himself. He was frantic. He's, you know, here, you have to take this look. Here's his agreement. And he gave me a lawyer's number to contact that said he had the full agreement. I contacted that lawyer. He gave me the runaround, of course. He did meet with me. He was very kind. He was very friendly with Johnny, but he refused to go into anything to do. And he actually, I try to work with him to co-counsel, to defend Johnny, and you know, he kind of blocked it. So at that point, I kind of fear, well, he's a little more favorable to the guys paying for the contract than he is Johnny, and I let it go from there.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because, you know, Daily Mail reported that if you look at the divorce paperwork, as you mentioned, said he was a trainer making $2,000 a month, but then less than a month later, he apparently goes on this shopping spree, buys 5 properties for over $765,000, possibly an all-cash deal. So you wonder again, where did the money come from? Did it come from this NDA agreement? Do you believe that Johnny is going to play a role in Sean Combs' criminal case? Do you believe that he has spoken with investigators in some capacity? Because if you look at this case where they're talking about sex workers being a part of these elaborate sexual episodes, freak-offs, Cassandra Ventura, again, we believe, could be a key witness in this case, possibly victim 1. You would think Johnny would be a key witness in this case. What can you tell us?
100%. As soon as Cassie filed her case, Johnny called me and he said, Tonia, I have information. I can help her case. And at that point, I think it took a day for them to settle. And I said, Johnny, I said, she settled the case. There's nothing to talk about. So, you know, as an investigator, or if Cassie needed support for her case, 100% Johnny would be there, and Johnny would testify and support her. And I'm sure has personal, intimate information, both about her and P. Diddy. And he would gladly share that if he felt protected in a courtroom setting. But right now, I think he's afraid. I hope he will talk, but I think he's afraid. Whether they're going to call him if he's in witness protection, I don't think so. And the reason I think so is because I don't think they need him. I think there are so many victims that it's unfathomable for us. I apologize why I'm talking so much. For us to imagine how many victims there are. And I think Johnny is one of many. And I found it very interesting in the interview when Johnny was speaking to Secret Service for Trump, and he's going off the rails on P. Diddy. And, you know, a lot of the information he had was public, but he had some intimate information as well. And the Secret Service agent just said, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear about him. I don't want to hear about P. Diddy. Stop talking this nonsense. And, you know, I saw Johnny's entire demeanor change in that interview. And I thought that was a big mistake.
I mean, it was before the lawsuits. It was before the arrest. It was before the indictment. That's why people are looking at this now and saying, oh my gosh, was there, you know, something to this? And just to be clear, so you can't say definitively whether or not the government has subpoenaed him to come, you know, obviously he's in a very interesting, precarious predicament, but to come and be a witness in the New York trial. We can't confirm that.
No, and they have complete access to him. So literally they don't have to give him notice. And they know he's a cooperative witness. They'll know that from Cassie. You know, they'll know that from him. Yeah.
You had said something in the Daily Mail, and I couldn't quite understand it, or at least this is how they perceived your answer to it, that it wasn't a coincidence that the timing of the Trump Doral incident coincided with Cassie Ventura ending her relationship with Sean Combs. What did you mean by that, if that is the correct statement?
Yeah, that's absolutely the correct statement, because it just fits Johnny's personality. If he was in the home with these girls and P. Diddy, and girls meaning Kim Porter and Cassie Ventura, he 100% would have told them, take the money and get out. Don't put up with this. Don't stay here. It would explain the hotel incident that I believe was in 2016 when we divorced and when he, you know, signed the NDA. I think is the time when Cassie tried to grab supposedly a bag of money and run out of the hotel and he beat her up. Uh, and that's what I think a lot of domestic violence victims don't understand that, well, in this case, it sounds like he was violent all the time, but some domestic violence cases are just very controlling,
Right.
and the violence only happens when they try to leave. And that's why you saw such aggression that day in the hotel. But I definitely could see Johnny instigating some of that.
So,
Yeah.
so Tonia, before I finish up here, one other thing
Sure.
is, look, you have been so generous with your time and open about Johnny's situation, your relationship with him. Unfortunately, whenever you put anything out into the media, when you put something out online, there are of course going to be people who are skeptical and who are going to look into Johnny's life. They're going to look into your life. And I wanted to give you a quick opportunity to respond to something, because I imagine anybody's credibility is always challenged. They look at people's lives, they look at what they've done. And one thing I just wanted to give you an opportunity to respond about that someone might bring up is, my understanding is you had a past disciplinary action. And I wanted to get out, and you have a response to it. I understand that this was back in 2018, the Florida Bar Association. I'm just going to read the release, and then I would love your response. The release from the bar said, Troutwine prepared a power of attorney to allow her to take over the financial and legal affairs of an elderly neighbor who was ill and suffering from dementia without the woman's consent. Troutwine was dishonest in representation she made to a law enforcement officer, and she also caused a notary to lose his license by knowingly giving him incorrect information about Florida law as it pertains to notaries. So again, people might look at that, question your credibility. I want to give you an opportunity to respond to all that.
Ooh, okay. Where did I start? That was a big deal. That was the drama I was going through while Johnny was going through his personal drama. It all started with a fight with the condo board, which is a kind of a big deal happening today. I ran for condo president. I won condo president. The bigger investor that owned more units, I owned one, but I was friends with the other 100 owners. So I won the election by vote, but he owned 400 units and tried to count those. This is where that whole problem stems from. Esther, the elderly lady, was my neighbor and was best friends with my mom. She had actually helped me to pass the bar exam. She was a physical education teacher for Florida State University in her younger years. My mother had a very violent accident, and she helped rehabilitate my mom while I was studying for the Florida bar. She would read my notes. I remember her voice and the tapes while I was studying. We had a very close relationship. My mother would cook for her. She was a single woman with no children. She had nieces and nephews and a brother her age. She had no children. My mom cooked for her every holiday. She was an extended part of our family. And my mom had passed, and she consulted with me after mom passed and said she was scared because she encouraged us to buy that condo. She met with us before we purchased it. We almost like an interview. We interviewed with her. She liked my mom liked her, and it was a great relationship the two had as long as my mom was alive. When she passed, she came to me and said, what do I do? I'm very scared. Your mom's not there. I told her, don't worry. I'm going to move into the condo, and anything you need, you come to me. It'll be just like mom was here. You don't worry. And I will not leave this condo or put anyone in it that you're not satisfied with. Right. And she was happy with that. And she watched every day. And I went on vacation for a week. I came back. She had taken a fall. She got scared. So she had full Medicare. She had a home health care worker. Everything was fine. But she had an issue with one or two of her home health care workers. And I said, don't worry, Esther, you just call the agency. They'll send you a new one. If they don't, or you have a problem, you come to me. I'll help you out. We'll get through this. Don't worry. Well, time went on and she had a healthcare worker she was happy with that kind of left. She left her number. I didn't get it. I should have. I regret that now. And she somehow got a new healthcare worker that was extremely violent, abusive, and aggressive with her. And I witnessed it on several occasions. I reported it to Adult Family Services. I reported it to every agency under the sun. I communicated with her family. Her brother was concerned about her. He was in an elderly, old folks nursing home, her brother. He had contacted me and said he wanted contact with his sister. The new home healthcare worker had blocked contact from him, from her extended family and her friends, including myself. She was quite violent and no one wanted to be around her. So her brother, George, said, can you help my sister? And I was like, sure. And then I said, well, let me get your son involved, Warren, because I realized their age and situation. And Warren was, Home Depot worker who's familiar with everything going on. He's very close with his father. So I was in communication with the family. So I was literally hired by Esther herself, who had asked me to intervene, her brother, and his son. So of course I intervened. I could have done a power of attorney, but you can't explain everything to, the person at the time. I could have done the power of attorney without being an attorney. I didn't need a law license to do that. People do that for their friends and neighbors and loved family members all the time. So what I was doing really had nothing to do with my bar license, except the fact that I happen to know how to do it. Now, the police were called. I called them because of the violent healthcare worker, because I didn't want a violent reaction when I came in with a family to have her removed and have a new healthcare worker put in place. So the president of the Florida bar, she was what you would traditionally call a scapegoat profiteer. In other words, she was trying to take the land, the property, the condo. And she was concerned that if I took over, because we had it out with one another, and we were involved in several lawsuits, I kept her from foreclosing on 10 condominiums for other members there and taking ownership without paying for the condos. And she was concerned if I took over Esther's affairs, that she would not have the ability to take over that condo. Yeah, I meant the president of the condo, not the Florida bar. I misspoke.
Okay,
I had an issue with the president of the condominium, not the Florida bar. I'm mixing ideas here, talking about Florida bar and condo.
Yeah.
But she was the complainant, not the client. So there are a lot of problems with that. It was just a very emotional situation that I didn't think I should continue to challenge. But I do intend to clear my name of that eventually with some constitutional and other issues I'm exploring right now that aren't, this is not a standard case.
Yeah.
And one thing I would like to say that I felt should, in that bar case, that should have been considered that was the adversarial nature between me and the condo president. There's actually a clause in the rules regulating the Florida bar that they are not supposed to take cases in adversarial relationships. Otherwise, in every lawsuit, you're going to have the two parties filing bar complaints against each other to try to win the suit by who gets the best bar complaint. So, and traditionally it's not done, but we have new people in play at the Florida bar. And so that's why you're seeing these hordes of bar complaints going forward, because you have new people who aren't enforcing the old rules.
Well, this is why I wanted to give you the platform to address it and make it, basically, according to you, it's a lot more complicated than people might initially assess it to be.
Yeah, and how do you explain all that?
No, I get it. And listen, easy, right? I'm a lawyer. I get it too. I understand. Listen, Tonia Troutwine, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about all this. Really, really appreciate it. Would love to open the dialogue, continue the dialogue as all of this progresses. Thank you so much. It was great getting a chance to meet you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Okay, so before we go any further, I want to bring in criminal defense attorney Mauricio Padilla to talk more about this. Mauricio, so good to have you on here. Thanks so much for taking the time. What do you make of this report about an NDA?
Thanks for having me. I saw the report and I read up on it. Not only was there an NDA, and he claims that he was paid $5 million to execute the NDA, but his wife at the time was interviewed that they had broken up and they were going through a divorce, and she's given an explanation that during that time that he all of a sudden started to buy a property, that he bought like $700,000 in property, and that was from a guy that she knew didn't have any money. So is he the most credible person? No, because he shot up Trump's hotel and is currently in jail. But that there is some type of evidence to back up this claim, I think that there is.
Well, when he talks about Cassie Ventura, and you think about her lawsuit where she claims she was sexually, psychologically, physically abused by Combs, forced to perform in freak-offs. We all saw that tape published by CNN of Combs purportedly beating her up in a hotel hallway in 2016. He publicly apologized for it. With her potentially testifying at trial, you have to wonder, is everything he's saying all true? And you have to wonder whether or not he's going to play a role at this case. What do you think, Mauricio?
Well, I mean, I think there's two different questions. The first question is whether or not what he is saying is true regarding him being, a prostitute that was hired by Diddy. The second question is, because I believe at this point, I think most people believe that is true, because it's aligning with what the government is now telling us. So it's not, we're not believing a crazy person that shut up a hotel. We're believing what the government's version is, because it aligns with his version of events. I guess the real question is the federal government going to use somebody as damaged as him as a witness in their case? And I guess the real question is the necessity. Do they believe that they need to bring somebody like him, or can they prove their case without depending on what seems to be like a crazy person?
Well, maybe, but then again, it's potentially corroborating her account, and she could be the key witness in this case. We believe she might be victim one in this case. But in terms of the in terms of the NDA, apologies, does that prevent him from testifying?
No, and there's a litigation privilege where you can testify. You cannot get sued, as far as I know. You cannot get sued because you signed an NDA because you were subpoenaed to testify. A subpoena to testify in federal court should overrule any other kind of restriction, contractual restriction that may exist, like an NDA. So I think you're allowed to testify. And just to answer my own question about whether or not the government could use them, listen, I've seen them use worse. I've seen them use murder in cases. So, they're capable of doing it.
Is an NDA like that legal? So let's say, for example, it said whatever happened behind closed doors, you can't talk about it. Is it legal? Is it common?
It's common and it's legal. And usually what you're looking at is, did you get something for it? So if I make you sign an NDA and I don't give you any money for it, then that's one of the elements of as far as I know, of an NDA. So if someone like him got $5 million, yeah, that's legal. You could have people sign because they're getting something for what they're agreeing to.
But if he breaks it, he could be sued over it, obviously, and if it wasn't a flat payment but a recurring payment, I'm sure it could have been stopped. Let me ask you this: you look at I don't know if you saw the actual screenshot of what the signing page looked like, but is there any way? I mean, there is a signature on it. It's, again, over Sean Combs individually and on behalf of Bad Boy Worldwide, Sean John Enterprises. Any way to verify that's his signature?
Well, yeah, listen, there's multiple ways. First of all, there's going to be, if there's an NDA, there should be like a trail. How did he get the NDA? Did he have a lawyer at the time? Did he have a lawyer? Are there emails? So that's the first, in my experience, the first analysis of whether or not there's a trail out there regarding this NDA. Then second of all is the document in itself. Is it his signature? I've been involved in countless, lawsuits civilly, and I've seen it in criminal cases as well, where they bring handwriting experts to decipher whether or not that's P. Diddy's signature or not. Then there's actual document analysis where they can do ink dating to see if the ink is as old as he says it is, and whether or not the document aligns with the time frame that he says that the document was created. So there's multiple ways of scrutinizing the document, both forensically, electronically, and actually physical, and the analysis of the handwriting.
This is interesting. Could the NDA come into evidence at Sean Combs' criminal trial? What do I mean? Could the NDA, the mere existence of the NDA, come into evidence? I don't know what was collected from Sean Combs' properties. Then again, if it's a legal document, you imagine might probably be with his lawyer. But let's say there was a copy that was found on his properties, either in LA or Miami. Federal investigators get it. Can they introduce it into evidence? How would they introduce it into evidence? For what purpose? Again, I'm just trying to speculate because it's a big story on the eve of opening statements next week.
I think that number one, they could, because if they're going to use this gentleman, it bolsters his version of events. And it also aligns with what the government is saying that P. Diddy would do. He would contract people like him, male prostitutes, and whether or not did he travel across state lines? Is this one of the people that Diddy actually contracted to commit the crimes that he's currently charged against? So if that's the case, I think that the NDA is definitely something that the government can use. How would they bring it in? They could bring it in through this gentleman himself. They could ask him, like they can authenticate it through him, or they could try and bring other persons to authenticate it. I don't know if they could really subpoena his lawyer. They could track down where this document was created, what law office created it. And also, if you're gonna pay somebody, let's say $5 million for an NDA, in my experience, the person that you are paying has to have a lawyer. You don't want to be throwing around that kind of money. You're paying for a silence pretty much. You don't want to do that when the person is not represented, because that can create a little loophole for the person to try and get out of it. Like, I didn't know what I was signing. I didn't have a lawyer at the time. So that, I would envision that if he threw that kind of money at him, that he would have made sure that he had an attorney.
But what they can't do is just have a federal agent who picked it up during the search and said, yeah, this is what I picked it up. This is what it reads. This is what it says. And just read it out. That wouldn't be allowed, right?
Okay. Legally, no, but I've seen them try and do it. So
Really?
Just because, yeah. I've seen them try to authenticate things through agents and through agents that do cell phone extractions, where they're overstepping the knowledge that they should be authenticating, certain files and things that I've seen them try and do it. So just because they're legally not supposed to do it doesn't mean that the government doesn't try.
Just a wild new development in this case. Mauricio Padilla, I know you're going to be following the Diddy case with me. Thank you so much for coming on. It was good seeing you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
And that is all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.